Claus Juhl from the Windows Localization team at building 24.
Yeah,
which is
right here in the main Redmond campus.
Exactly, right? The Tower of Babel.
Well, they're not quite towers.
I know.
It's like a three-floor.
Yeah, exactly. But this is where we kind of have gathered rather than spread the localization of Windows.
Yeah.
And to describe localization to people who might not know what it is, in this context it's to adapt a US application to a different market or a local market,
so like
worldwide.
You have an interesting flag up here, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from Denmark, and I was born in Aarhus.
You didn't work for Navision too over there, did you?
I didn't, no. I used to work for Microsoft in Ireland, in localization as well, for Windows, and then 1 year in office afterwards, and then I decided I'd go back to Windows. That's more exciting.
I met the guys in Ireland in Dublin, I think. Dublin or Cork? Dublin, I think.
Yeah, exactly. In Sandefjord Industrial Estate, I think.
Yeah.
They have a few buildings over there. I think it's one of the biggest development centers outside of the Redmond campus.
Yeah.
Together with, of course, Navision in Denmark is kind of huge as well.
Yeah, they have 1,200 people. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you go in there and it's just like here, you know. Yeah. Your office looks the same, you know.
Exactly.
So, my key card was slightly different, though.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, anyways, so
here in this building, just to give you an idea of how big this department is, there's about probably 30 or 40 different nationalities in this building alone. And I mean, on the campus, of course, there's a total amount of nationalities, maybe 100 probably. Let's say. But here we have about 23 core languages. Which means like the full version of Windows.
Yeah.
And we have a number of other people,
so
of course.
Languages like Japanese, Chinese,
German, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, Finnish, Dutch, and all languages.
Yeah.
Basically, that main revenue drivers and so on. And then, of course, Windows is going into the field of Starter Edition and Lib editions, where there's a limited number of users for those markets, but it's kind of linked to the to breaking the digital divide in like small populations or languages that has kind of a threat of being extinguished, like the Irish Gaelic language.
Yeah.
There was an Irish version released recently of a lib, which I think might improve the excitement of keeping the language alive. So, which I think has been a problem in Ireland for many years for young people to keep the interest in learning.
I had a request from a customer to localize to the Hawaiian language, right, which is another one of those threatened languages.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I was over in China, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and using Windows in Chinese.
Yeah.
And I found I still could use it, even though everything I saw was Chinese.
Exactly.
I don't read Chinese.
You know the shortcuts and so on. And it's the same like sometimes when we are finished with one, for example, I'm doing the Danish Windows Vista, for example. After that, we actually get reassigned over to help out on the bug fixing of the lib languages. And then, of course, yes, you don't speak the language, but you're still able to like detect like bugs and so on, like truncation bugs or whatever, localization bugs, which might create a functional bug as well.
Yeah.
Let's say if my documents, the string is localized inconsistently, that's a problem because they map to, so you can actually click on a link and open my documents folder.
Yeah.
But that won't work if it was localized inconsistently.
Yeah.
So that's...
Since you're working on Windows Vista, how do you work? Is there just a text file, and what do your tools look like? What does the source code to you look like?
Yeah.
Do you have to actually go into the source code, or is there a little resource file, a text file somewhere that you just have to translate all the text items?
Basically what happens is we don't get the RC files, resource files there, but we get the actual DLLs, so the binaries, the executables and everything. And we have a tool called Lock Studio, which we actually Lock Studio, Localization Studio, and where we actually import those files into, and we have certain parsers that they will then pass depending on the file type.
Okay.
And we basically localize in that application there, and I'll give you a demo of that in a minute.
Okay.
But I can give you an idea of what kind of strings that we might.
Sure.
C, for example.
So this would be a string in the English source code?
Yeah, for example, and basically that's just a message string, an error message. And often you would have to change the object and the subject of that string in your own language. And what the US English version would say in, let's say, 3 short words, often foreign languages will say in like 4 long words.
Yeah.
So, and you would change the order of it as well. So, for example, for Danish, you would write. So, and then there's another problem in the sense that sometimes the messages can be so cryptic that you don't know what the variables stand for, and then you would have to look into the context of the whole application, of course,
right,
to understand that. Then, in order to ensure that an application is actually compliant with the localization, we also have something called pseudo localization.
Server?
Pseudo.
Oh, that's pseudo
localization, yeah. And that means that it's a test that we run on each US application, and it will basically populate all the US strings with extended characters to make sure that there's no issues with extended characters.
Like they might be truncated or not displayed completely.
Yeah.
Because some languages use more characters than English, some use less, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it was more of a problem in the old days, operating system days, with extended characters when it wasn't Unicode based.
Yep.
But still, there could still be some sub-components that don't support Unicode. So therefore, this pseudo localization would replace all the applicable characters that in the US with extended characters, but still leave it readable. So therefore, like whatever you could transfer into an extended character, the pseudo localization would do this.
Got it.
Therefore, you actually we're trying to attempt to break the application that way, and if we break it, it's not compliant with localization and globalization, of course.
Yep.
Also to
so if it breaks, do you fix that, or do you go and yell at another team and say, hey,
we open a bug for the developer or the owner of that component.
Okay.
And also, you just mentioned yourself truncations and so on. This same pseudo localization also populates the US string in the translation with a number of characters as well here to make it longer. I can't exactly remember how many percentage longer it would be, but most languages are longer, as mentioned before, than the US would be. So that's just
I know some of the issues.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen them before.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of skills do you need to work on this team? Do you need to know 15 languages? Or?
No, fortunately not. I mean, of course, being Danish and so on, I've been forced in school to learn English and German as well.
Yeah.
Danish
They're mean over in Europe, aren't they?
Yes. But
our American school should be a little bit meaner.
Yeah.
teach more languages.
Yeah. But it basically is necessary for a small country like Denmark that you do learn other languages, whether you work in business or any other area, because we have such a big trade with foreign languages then.
Yep.
So, but basically that's how I got my linguistic skills from school and business college, and I studied a little bit of electronics. I studied in some business as well in Monterey, Pacific Rim Studies, which was cross-cultural communication, which has helped me as well to understand the different cultures of course, of different languages and markets and so on.
Now, Michael Kaplan, who I interviewed before, said he really doesn't know the languages he's working on. He understands the length and the string and the,
exactly.
But he doesn't need to know Chinese, for instance, to localize to Chinese. There's localization and then there's translation, right? He's not a translator.
No.
He's a guy who works on making sure that it works and
Yeah, exactly.
making sure that the translated string gets put into Windows properly, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we actually do the same thing. Localization for us is both translation as well as, you know, resizing dialog boxes, and sometimes we have to fake some screenshots, bitmaps that's going to be put on packaging as well as the booting screen as well. Sometimes has some bitmaps with English text on. Usually we would prefer not to have that, but I think they're getting better as well in the US development teams to avoid putting text on bitmaps, so we don't have to, you know, first kind of fake it off and then put on localized text.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for icons as well. You don't see that much anymore that you would have text on icons.
Yeah.
The only icons we would localize would be bold, italic, and underline.
Ooh, that's right, because
In
bold
WordPress.
is in Word is a B, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And,
for example,
and I is an italic I.
yeah,
So in Chinese, is that something different?
I don't know what it is in Chinese, but it's
but in
different.
other
I'm sure,
languages
probably.
are different?
Yeah, Danish it's like F and K and U
Yeah.
instead of those. But I can give you a good example of icons that are not globalized. For example, you've probably seen them before, a running man, which means to run a command.
Yeah.
And that's not a globalized icon really, because you can't say that in Danish, for example, to run a command
Interesting.
in the same way. Because
that's right.
like running, right? We say drive actually. Drive a command. Sure. But and that wouldn't make sense in English either, of course. But
Wow.
that's how you can see the differences between different languages there.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I think the Windows Localization Engineer probably has the biggest product impact of any Microsoft employee, because if you consider the size of, for example, Windows Vista, we touch every single file and every single component. We test our own builds there, and whereas if you take a US developer, nothing said bad about the US developers, we have the best in the world, of course, in Microsoft, but they only have capability of owning one file or a couple of files maybe and one component, whereas we have to touch every single file in Windows Vista.
Wow.
For every single language, of course.
So you actually know the operating system better than most people here in Redmond, huh?
I'm not so sure about that, but I know it pretty well, but not from a development perspective, of course.
Yeah.
But definitely, I would know maybe more files than the average developer. Yes.
Right.
So
what do you? Are you going to give me a demo today?
yeah, I'll give you a demo of one of the tools that we use.
All right. Now you're still using XP as your development machine?
Yes, and I mean I have a pre-beta 2 level built,
Yeah.
and I don't think we can show that since it hasn't released yet, beta 2. I have a localized build there in Danish.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah, you should show us that.
yeah, well,
We can
I should,
argue with the PR team whether it gets out or not.
Yeah, sure.
Is this the CTP build? Because we just released the CTP build here in the United States
It's
yesterday.
5326.
I don't know what got released yesterday. I'm not. We can show it.
Yeah,
and
sure, okay.
if that part of the video gets held, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
So you have a couple boxes here, one with. Oh, yeah.
So this will give you an idea of the sort of localization that I described before.
Yeah.
You can see the US characters has been replaced by pseudo localization to kind of provoke a break and make sure that it actually does display extended characters.
Let me just pause a second. I have to turn off this stabilization on my camcorder.
Yeah.
Hold on. Well, cool, we're back. The image stabilization on my camera was making it jerky.
Oh, okay.
Which is funny because it's supposed to make it not jerky, but
Okay, exactly.
these cameras get fooled pretty easily. It's a Panasonic
Okay.
camera.
So we're on again? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically you can see, as I mentioned before, the pseudo localization here kind of tries to provoke a break. That didn't happen, fortunately, but by replacing the US characters with extended characters where it's applicable, so that it's still readable. So you see, like, you can still read the English text. You might not be able to pronounce it, but
and it's doing this for testing. This doesn't go to a customer, for instance.
No, it doesn't.
This is just for your testing to make sure that everything looks proper.
It is,
even
yes.
when it'll stick in other languages.
Exactly, and let's say, for example, it did break, or if it went down on 2 lines, this first line here, we would open a box saying, like, there's a truncation bug here. that breaks it into 2 lines, whereas we, of course, for all languages, we would have it on the same line, this control and delete 2. Let's see here. So basically, I'm just going to show you Log Studio, the basics of Log Studio. And,
so customers can't see this tool, right? This is just for internal developers here at Microsoft?
It is, yes. And we do share the tool with our localization partners, which is when we outsource some of our translations. The less visible translations and so on, we do outsource those.
Right.
Because mainly, I mean, I'm one Danish person for Danish Windows Vista.
Yeah.
I can't handle, of course, localizing all of those strings and so on. Like so,
right.
I would mainly take care of the most visible parts, the main UI.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example here. So we just create a new database here.
Okay.
And 2 languages here. Desktop.
So what are you doing here? Just trying to find a file?
Yeah, I'm just trying to put it in a location where I know where it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So we basically you set the source language, which is of course US English.
Yeah.
And we put source and a target folder here now. Check Danish here. We'll add one of the executables. For example, I've taken here Solitaire, which is a world famous game.
Ah.
And we'll add that to the project here.
Yep.
We'll open all the resources here.
Okay.
And now auto translation, which is a function of Log Studio, would only work, of course, if you've had a previous version of Solitaire. So fortunately, I had a previous version, which is from Windows XP.
Yep.
This is gonna save us loads of time, of course. I'll get a few hits, 100% match, and
let me just move my tripod so I can move in closer. Okay.
so basically what you see here now is it's already it's had 36 hits,
Okay.
which is now in Danish already. I then generate the file to have a look at it. Danish here. And because it only had 36 hits, of course there's more than 36 strings in this application. You would have to do some manual work as well.
Yep.
And a new version of Solitaire. But it gives you an idea anyway.
And everything's translated to Danish?
Yeah, some of it, because it only had 36 hits there.
Ah, okay.
But besides, as I mentioned, translations, there's also going to be stuff like resizing of dialog boxes.
Okay.
So basically that one is not so good example here. But sometimes the translation could be a lot longer,
Right.
you know, than the US version. So you would have to kind of resize the whole dialog box sometimes, and sometimes the buttons as well. It's very
you have control of all this.
Yes, it's very much like a Visual Studio, the dialog editor in Visual Studio. So it's a very powerful tool. We hope to get a newer version of the Log Studio suite at some point, because it's kind of the development of file types and so on. Log Studio hasn't followed that same speed of development there, so we hope to get an updated version soon. It's updating all the time, but in small steps, really.
Yeah.
So.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So if you saved that dialog box that big, it's going to be that big in the Danish version of Solitaire.
It will be. Yeah.
So you have a lot of control.
Yes, and that's what I meant with the big game.
You can mess up the whole billion people's lives if you want.
Well, at least 5 million people in Denmark. So
well, in Denmark, but in China,
that's not my intention, of course. But that gives you an idea of how much impact you actually have on it, and of course we do our best to do it as good as possible. Because I mean, people in localization don't only have a passion for computers, but also their local market. We want to make it the best for our own market. and that's a good thing about having the natives working on it, of course.
Does anybody check your work, or?
Yes, we have something called MILS, which is the Microsoft International Language Services, which is good. I mean, you don't want to check your own stuff really, because you always overlook a lot of the stuff that you know it from yourself. If you write an article, you would always make some mistakes. You'll overlook and so on because you know the text so well. Yeah. Someone else will find your mistakes pretty easily. So,
editors are good.
Yes, definitely.
Although I'd try to get rid of them in my life.
Okay. So,
cool.
Let's turn back to maybe to the Vista build.
Okay. Let's see if we can get into that.
This should be here. Work a little bit better here. So if you'd try to pronounce the pseudo localized, you'd sound like John Cleese or someone. I'm not sure.
Preparing your sound.
Exactly. So as you can see, I don't have the newest theme on this particular build here.
Yeah.
But you still get an idea. Again, there's pseudo localized stuff here that hasn't been manually localized yet.
Yeah.
That's going to be replaced by extended characters and so on, and made longer than the US text here.
Right.
Let's see if we can find solitaire that we just localized here. That is. Oh, that's empty now. So that hasn't been localized in this build yet.
Okay.
So that won't be available. But basically, this is one of the first then localized Vista builds.
So it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else we should know about your job, or about what it's like to use a localized version, or?
I think.
Or for some tips for software developers who are building on top of your work. You know,
I think it's always good that actually we used to have the department over in Ireland there. Then we moved the department over here, and which is really good to work so much closer to the development teams. It's much easier for us to get our concerns through, and it's easier for us to get bugs followed up on as well.
Yeah. For software developers who build on top of Windows, are there any recommendations that you have in terms of designing your apps, or?
Yes, definitely. I mean, never hard code a folder name in your applications. For example, some Danish application developers should never hard code the folder name. Yeah. They should always use the CLS IDs and so on for the folder names, of course. Okay. So for let's say program files, program files percentage, instead of using programmer, which is the Danish version. Let's say we change that in Windows, in the next version of Windows, the application would be broken. Yeah. So that kind of stuff. Basically, use the recommendations from MSDN and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there's been a myth, of course, about the security of localized operating systems. Are they as secure as the US version? And I can definitely say that yes, they are, because the security updates are released the same day for Danish Windows as the English one.
Oh, really?
Yes. Nowadays, it's many years ago that it was delayed, but nowadays it is released at the same time. So, cool. As long as you keep your computer up to date, as recommended by automatic updates. So.
Well, cool. Thank you very much for meeting with us.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, who are you?
Jeff Allen, and I manage the localization organization for Windows.
Yeah.
And that also includes a central services group that supports all the localization teams across the company.
Right. And who are we with? Who are you?
Yeah,
we just saw you on
before, yes.
Who are you?
I am Alp. I work for Jeff. I am, if you like, the strategist for international Windows client world.
Right. And when we first walked in, we were talking about some of the geopolitical stuff that you have to deal with too, right? You're not just converting text strings from one language to another and making sure it fits, right?
We're making a lot of decisions around, what's the most effective way to provide language support
Yeah.
cultural, language support in various markets around the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at where the opportunity is for Microsoft going forward, you know, the very, very high growth markets are those that we have not traditionally done a lot of business in.
Yeah.
You know, the growth rates from a PC perspective and the server perspective, those growth rates, those high growth rates are taking place in markets that we haven't, you know, as of a couple of years ago, like India, Indonesia, Africa, we didn't provide any language support for at all.
Yeah.
So this is all new to us in terms of how do we support these locales.
Five-sixths of the world's population has never used a computer, right?
That's right.
You know, that's pretty daunting when you think about it. Because we're in a society where if we meet somebody who hasn't touched a computer, we're like, what rock were you living under? But
and think about trying to learn a computer in a language that you're not familiar with, like English. I mean, for example, Africa, India, and Indonesia, just 3 countries where the growth rates are very, very high. And, you know, IT is taking off like it did here, you know, 10, 15 years ago. You know, about 2 billion people, 1/3 of the world, and for those folks to use a computer, they had to use that computer in English or French or something that they may not be familiar with.
If I had to use a French computer, I would be really mad. So I wouldn't be able to figure out anything.
I sometimes get mad trying to use an English one.
Yeah.
Let alone trying to use it in Indonesian Bahasa or you know, Hindi or something like that.
So, because we talked about how to localize, and we got a little demo of how he does his job. But there's bigger concerns, right? If you put a word into the start menu that makes an entire country mad, you can really have a problem on your hands, can't you?
We can do a lot of damage from a public relations perspective. While our hearts are in the right place and we're trying to do the right thing to support a particular country, if we don't do it in the right way, we can potentially offend them or create public relations damage. When all along, all we were trying to do is do the right thing for that particular country. So yeah, it's a challenge to make sure that we don't do anything geopolitically wrong. Now we have processes to do that, and there are subject matter experts that we tap into, and so there are ways to try to keep ourselves from making that mistake.
But it's easy to do, right?
It's easy to do.
Even if you know both languages, you might translate a word from one language to another and make a mistake, not in the translation, but in understanding the culture of that country, and we've heard of famous cases of other companies that have, named products badly for a local market or whatnot.
Right.
So do you guys get involved in naming products and all that fun stuff, the marketing, or is it just what's on the screen that you
we're really just translating. I mean, translating, is just one part of localizing, but we're really just translating what's in the U.S. English product in a way that feels local. Feels like the intent is that we're developing a product through this localization process that looks and feels like it was made for that particular market.
Yeah.
We have a ways to go before we're completely there, but that's the intent.
Yeah. Well, and you have to look for things, colloquialisms. Like in California, we say, awesome, dude. Well, in Australia or in China, that might not fly. You might not have any understanding of what that means, right?
There are a lot of things that don't translate very well.
From California into to other languages. I can tell you guys have had that other states as well, right? Even if you're here in the United States, if you say awesome, dude, to somebody, I don't know, some other state, they might not. They might look at you strange, like, what planet did you come from?
Just speaking of, different countries as well, we also open box for the US team, for example. If there's a country list, we actually have to write country/region as well. Because not all regions are considered countries and so on, even though, they all appear in this list.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's actually a broken drop-down list, actually, if it says country only.
And do you guys get involved in the debates of who is a country and who, is Palestine a country or not? And do they get on that list?
If it's
I know that's one that popped up on the blogs recently.
If it's in question, we tend to stay away.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do get involved with that, but we try. We don't want to ourselves establish one way or the other, whether a country is a country or a region is recognized or anything like that. And we tend to try to steer clear of that kind of stuff.
But there is one really important point for those people that's going to, I guess, watch this video. What we are talking about here so far from translation perspective and localization perspective, that is all from the process point of view.
Yeah.
What we really do and where we are really going forward is that apart from the language aspect of it, what our job really is to customize the software to, bring it to the individual.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter what language it is in, it doesn't matter what culture it is in, we really want to narrow the gap to that individual.
Yeah.
Right? For example, in the United States today, 1 in every 7 people speak Spanish. Right? So what does that mean, and how as a group we can focus on that particular individual, on that particular culture and diversity of that individual.
Yep.
So that is what we are really trying to do as well. What we are talking from translation perspective, it is the process Jeff's organization run.
Yeah.
But if you think there is 6.5 billion people in the world, right?
And how many languages are in the world?
We have on our database right now, including some of the community languages, we have over 2,000 languages.
Wow.
At the moment we are focusing right on 100 languages. Some interesting facts for you, only 244, I think, no, it is around 340 million people around the world speak English, right?
Only 340?
340, and Chinese is, I believe, is 1.2 billion people speak Chinese, 1.08 billion people speak Hindi, right? Now you got to think about each individual's culture, you got to think about what they want to get from the software, just away from the translation of the software. How can we make that communication link, if you like,
yeah,
stronger between the core product and that person. That is, I guess, that is the future for us. That is what we are really trying to achieve, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Localization up until, with Windows XP, when we launched Windows XP, we supported 23 languages, 24 including English. With Vista, we'll support 100 languages.
Fully or partially?
Partially.
Okay.
Derivatives of full localization. And we can do that with what we call the language interface pack and some other solutions that have been developed. So now no longer is the decision all about return on investment. We can make decisions now in a cost-effective way. We can make decisions about how to support a particular language that's outside of economics.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're up to 100 languages, and then we're building software development kits and some other solutions that will allow communities to help themselves and build their own language packs. That's something that's...
Yeah, we heard about that last time we
with.
talked with Michael Kaplan.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because there's a lot of, like you said, there's 2,000 languages, and you're only going to work on 100 of them. Well, if there's a language out there that 50 people in the world speak, they can get together
help
and
themselves
and make a version of Windows for themselves. That's really neat.
I saw you surprised when Alp mentioned that there are so many that spoke English. That's of course native speakers. Well,
Yeah.
So you're surprised about the low figure.
Yeah.
That's the native speakers.
Yeah. Well, we're so used to being able to go around. I've traveled all over the world, and I usually find somebody who speaks a little bit of English in every town, Well, there's a few towns that don't, and we do hand signals there. How do I do this? Get some food. What's your day-to-day job like?
What's my day-to-day job? Well, earlier on you were talking about, products being geopolitically correct or strategically, we are doing the right things. Right now what we are doing, I'm about 100% dedicated on Vista,
Yep.
right? I am working at the SKU level. What that means is in what international markets, what SKUs, what products, and what features we are going to push,
Yeah.
right? What languages and how it is going to behave, what the business policies are going to be. We had few recent really interesting examples. Some of the features we are putting into Vista may not be geopolitically correct. In that case, we deal with the executives and we give them our feedback. We deal with the lawyers, We are also just at the edge of, if you like, a software revolution from localization perspective as well. We'll be able to offer a lot more language features to our customers.
Yeah.
So what I try to figure out, how those features are going to look like, what is the business policy going to be, how do we monetize on that, should we not monetize on it.
Yeah.
Then Jeff looks into emerging markets, those small community languages, right? We have a number of teams, we talk about where is the best place to make our investment, what language, what country, what locale should we go after, and how should the product behave for those languages or locales.
Yeah.
So it is all about planning, thinking about the future, working with the localization teams.
Yeah, isn't it? You know, I can understand having the start button and the menus localized, and having we looked at solitary even, right? But so much of my user experience today is on the web, and so much of that is all in English, right? Or there's a lot of it that's in Farsi and Chinese, and I can't read that, right?
Sure.
And I feel locked out. And I'm sure that people in those countries feel locked out of the content I generate every day. Is that something that you guys are worried about? Or?
Oh, very much so. Let me give you an example. I think I use this during our presentations, and it is very dear to me, dear to my heart as well. So I was born in Turkey.
Yeah.
I got educated in Ireland. My wife is Irish. My son is going to high school in Redmond High, right? So I speak English all the time at work, but I like writing emails to my that's one of those Mission Impossible calls. But I like writing emails to my dad in Turkish in the evenings, and my wife actually speaks Irish, right? And my son does his homework in English.
Yeah.
So we got a number of PCs at home, but how do you manage all that stuff, right? How do you manage all the interface? If my dad and mom are visiting us, right, you know, they can speak English. How can they use Turkish on our machines,
Yeah.
right? And I'm very humbled to be part of this team, because that's what we do,
Yeah.
right? My wife writes her stuff and uses her stuff in Irish. My son does the homework in English. He can also learn more Turkish, reading Turkish papers and all that through Windows and Media Center,
Yeah.
right?
Well, my mother-in-law is Farsi, is
There you go.
Iranian, and we can't speak together, right? But
And we are doing
we
Farsi.
always have to translate. Yeah.
They are doing Farsi stuff.
I recognize it totally as well. My wife happens to be Irish as well, by the way, and my son as well. That's actually a difficult thing there with languages. There, he doesn't find so much interest in Danish, but I try to learn, get him to learn some Danish. There, he's 3.5 years old now. But it is definitely true. But I also know from the World Wide Web Consortium there is working very much on figuring out the international strategy as well for the web.
And we should all of our kids should learn Chinese, and we don't teach that in school at all, right? You know, I mean, we do billions of dollars in transactions with Chinese every day, and we have so few skills of how to talk with people around the world. What else do I need to know about what your team does and the challenges that you guys have, or how it differs from the Xbox team here at Microsoft or the SQL Server team? Or,
Yeah, I think
it sounds like it's a pretty unique team you got here, you know, with the various languages and cultures that you have on the team and stuff.
I think it is very unique, and I think international's a lot of fun. You know, with just what's happening with respect to computing outside of the Western world. You know, the growth rates are exciting. That's exciting for the industry as well as Microsoft. But to really take advantage of what's happening in those markets, you know, the product needs to look and feel more like it's been developed or built in those particular markets, and so that's an important thing for us to get right.
That's an interesting question, because when I go and travel abroad, I notice the usage pattern is different than here. For instance, here when I go to Starbucks in the United States, I see lots of people with laptops open, using laptops. And over in Starbucks, like in London or in Germany or in France, I see a lot of people on mobile phones.
Yeah.
And the usage pattern is completely different. They don't use the computer the same way we do, right? Do you guys go over there and study how people use computers around the world, and and try to bring some of that feedback and really localize an operating system?
We have what we call subsidiary program managers. Okay. That in fact we've got 30 some odd locales where we've got subsidiary program managers, and their job is to capture that intelligence. Really understand what's going on in the market, and driving that feedback back into our team, the international team, as well as the core teams, to try to respond to what's going on from a usage and customer experience expectation perspective. So yeah, we have that. We got eyes and ears on the ground in a lot of markets, including Africa, including India, Southeast Asia. So yeah, I think we've got pretty good coverage there. The key is to make that feedback loop seamless and very crisp and then to get the core teams to take action on that feedback. That's the thing we've got to work on next.
A good example of that as well is we've moved more and more of the testing of international applications to the sub as well. For example, the media center, because obviously you can't test European TV signals there. Yeah. So therefore that has to be done in the sub. So that's a good example of how we actually interact with the sub.
Yeah. I mentioned phones. Do you guys do just Windows Vista, or is there a separate localization team for phones and Xbox and stuff like that?
There's actually a separate team for the phones, the embedded devices division there. But we have actually I was actually the project manager for the Elara project, which is Windows Media Player for smartphones and pocket PCs. And but we actually delivered that back once we released the last version there, because we were going to be too busy with Windows Vista. Yeah. But it was interesting to work on such small platforms as well compared to a normal Windows platform. Yeah. Definitely learned something there.
Yeah, this group actually supports most of our server products, server management, server OS, management servers, connected systems, storage, as well as the client side products. So we probably have one of the largest, if not the largest, product footprint in the company in terms of who we support.
Yeah. Have you guys ever talked to software developers overseas and thought about how hard it is for a local economy to train their own software engineers? Because all the source code is in English, isn't it? Right. And it has English constructs. Even when you see Japanese, I used to work for Visual Basic Programmers Journal, and our articles would be translated to Japanese, and there's a lot of English in that article because you can't convert, go sub, to a Japanese thing. You have to put that English word right in the article. Is that a limiting factor of growing the software development
It's something that I'm actually spending quite a bit of time with at the moment. It is a limiting factor. I mean, the position that we've taken as it relates to software development kits, the position that Redmond has taken is that software development kits will remain in English. And that is just absolutely unacceptable for our friends in Japan, as an example. And we need to address that market specifically. Yeah. But it goes beyond Japan. I mean, we've got, again, lots of big markets. China is another example.
I was at a computer show in China and met many geeks, developers who were struggling with learning English so that they could learn more and more software development techniques.
And today they get no support. And so we are working on a change in the strategy there. It's a very expensive thing to address or issue to address, but we are working on that.
Cool. Apart from the developer, I think it would be good to mention, Jeff, too, your community programs too, and the local language program initiative you are running, because we are partnering with the Jeff leads a number of different virtual groups around the company too, leading our efforts at government level, right, to support the IT structure and development of the IT structure in those countries. Yeah. So that is how the LIP, as everybody knows it, that is how it has been really born. And as we said, this time we are expanding our language list to 62 for the language interface packs.
Thank you very much for spending a few minutes with me.
Sure. No, my pleasure.
Nice team. Thanks. So we're getting the tour of the localization and globalization teams. And who are you?
I am Michael Kaplan, and actually you know me from
Yeah, you've been on Channel 9 before. You're a veteran. You're a two-timer.
That doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound right at all. And actually, we have one of our program managers.
Yeah.
Kieran Snyder.
Kieran Snyder.
Kieran Snyder, an NLS PM.
Excellent.
Michael.
And who are you again? You keep showing up in all these videos. You're giving me the tour, so he's leading me around and introducing me to all the cool people over here. So we've gotten a tour. We've gotten a pretty good tour so far today, right? I've met people who are doing localization, and we met the manager and all that stuff. So what else do we have to learn about how hard it is to convert Windows Vista to 100, what is it, 100 languages?
Yeah, about this time, yeah.
Well, actually, what we're going to talk about, I believe, is going a little beyond that even, and saying it's great that you have such a great Windows locale list, but if you're one of the locales that's not on that list, then it's not so great. And you're not impressed by the 100,
I'd probably start a blog and say Microsoft sucks, right? Because they don't.
Well, and actually that's some of what happens. And certainly in the old model where you had to have a business case that proved that you'd make X gazillion dollars before you do it was bad, but that business model has changed a lot. And in fact, Kieran is the owner of the
Locale Builder?
Market
No,
and language.
we are members of a team that owns the Locale Builder. There's a lot of people who have worked on it, but I own the Locale. Well, I have owned until recently the locale data. So for the locales that we support in the box, I kind of own putting that together and getting that out there.
Right. When Microsoft say that I own, what does that mean? Because that's how we talk internally.
Means
it's like
that I
own.
take the fall if it doesn't work. No, I mean if you own the, and from the PM side it means, right, there's also a dev owner of data and test owner of data. I own putting it all together, making sure it gets done, doing the research for it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And in the case of locales and the locale data, you work a lot with people in the subsidiaries in their regions, because I'm a linguist, but I don't speak all of the languages that we support, right? We have actually over 200 locales now for Vista. Many of which are new on top of XP.
What does it mean when you say you're a linguist? I don't think I've met a linguist before.
That's a good question. That's like an hour in itself.
We only have a couple
my
minutes.
background's in computational linguistics, which means I look at how language works and I try how people use language, and I try to make software do that.
Wow.
Right, so we do all kinds of stuff here long term. We help the speech and language team figure out how to do their proofing tools, and we work with localization team on how to do machine translation, and one of the things we do is sort of the language policy stuff around the locales that we support. So,
what got you into that? Because I can't imagine a 12-year-old waking up one day going, I'm going to be a linguist when I grow up.
I really liked languages and I really liked math, and it was a way to not have to choose, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, and
Very
now
cool.
I'm here with these people.
Very cool.
Some of whom like languages, some of whom like math. Works out. But yeah,
What part does math play in localization? I wouldn't expect to...
Well, in computational linguistics in general, right, if you're thinking about problems of machine translation, it's not so much that math itself is relevant, it's that the kind of thinking that a 12-year-old does when they say that they're interested in math kind of becomes computer science when you grow up.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's some intersection there, how that works. So, yeah.
Very
good.
cool.
It's good.
So anyways,
So
what are we here for
we
today?
have all these locales. We have all these locales.
It's Friday afternoon, you
It's
gotta have
great.
some fun.
It's true. And there's...
I know that's breaking the rules here at Microsoft, having fun.
I never have fun. I never eat candy either.
Yeah. Yeah. What is this big thing of candy?
She has a big bowl of candy in her office
I know,
too.
Michael and I are the suppliers on the floor.
You're the candy pushers.
Yes.
That's your new tag name.
People can buy. We want our fix. Please, we want our fix.
Locales candy. Yeah, so there's just 6,000 languages in the world, and there's only a few of us, and we can't do it all. And so we get a lot of requests that we just don't have the resources to do, even if there are people who would use software in those languages. So what we've been trying to do is create tools. Michael was involved a couple years ago in creating the keyboard layout creator that he can talk more about, but it lets people provide their own keyboard layouts, for whatever Unicode code points they want.
Yeah,
on that
I think we got to look at that last time.
I think we did.
Yeah. And the locale builder that we're going to talk about today is kind of the next step in that process to kind of let customers drive their own decisions, right? Drive their own locale support.
Now, is this like a wiki or something that anybody can go to one
No,
place?
this is actually a tool, and it really is. a set of tools that we turned around and decided, okay, what's the next most popular thing people ask for? And the first thing was keyboards. But the next thing is, well, you have this big, impressive list of languages, and I want my language on that list. And so that's what we basically decided we needed to do.
Right?
In regional
We wanna be able
options.
to put it so that they can go to the regional options control panel, and they can pick the locale that's on that list, and they can say, this is how I want my calendar to look.
Yeah.
And so they get a drop down with all those settings. Right, so that's the idea. So Michael is loading up regional options right now.
So they look at this list of all these languages and they say, that's great,
Yep.
except it kind of sucks that my language is not there.
Yep.
And
Now,
then they're much less
even this
impressed.
conversation is a blocking, right? Because if you speak some weird language, you know, one of the languages that's not on the 100, right? How are you going to understand this conversation? Know that you have a tool that you
Actually reminds me, I was going to ask you about whether or not any of the Channel 9 videos were being translated at all.
Not yet.
Okay, just thought I'd
Are you
ask.
volunteering, Michael?
We just had actually.
I speak fluent geek. I could.
Yeah.
They're translated into that already.
Indeed.
We just
So-
did an interview with the tablet PC team, and there's several people who speak several. I did an interview in Japanese, one in Korean, and one in Chinese. So all on the same topic. So we're trying to think about how to get the same
How to
content
globalize
out there.
Channel 9.
How to globalize Channel 9, but
Awesome.
it is rough because I only speak English, and so I have to be translated, or somebody has to translate even the questions. So,
Sure.
anyways,
Subtitled Rob. Okay, so the list is great, but again, it's not great if you wanted your language on it. So basically, there's this tool
yeah.
that there's already screenshots out there on the web now. And they're
Probably
able
on your blog, huh?
No, not my blog, not my blog.
Oh,
No. Actually, there was a pointer from my blog to the person who had done it, because it was very funny. I had said he is actually much more active in the ones he's creating.
Yeah.
And he actually decided to use Klingon as an example because he wanted to pick a language that there probably wasn't a user community that was going to have an ambassador that was going to be offended by what the choices were. So it was just the easiest language to pick for that, because
Yeah.
the Klingon High Council probably won't make the trip to Earth.
You've never
just
met
to
a Star Trek
complain.
fan, have you?
Yeah, but having an actual Klingon versus having somebody with a rubber forehead.
Yeah.
But anyway, so basically it's creating a tool that would allow you to either create a new locale or open up an existing one,
Right.
and then change whatever settings you want to change in there. So, for example, we want to create a custom one from an existing one. And we can say, well, I feel very strongly about English Singapore. And then you can turn around and decide that you want to edit in the various steps. So I'm going to create this one. And now I have a chance to look at all of the settings that are in a locale.
Yeah.
And change the ones that I didn't feel all that strongly about, or did feel strongly about.
A lot of times, right, if we have to make choices, right, but there are multiple ways of saying something. So we have an example from Norwegian, right? We could have chosen two spellings for the word Sunday. We chose the one that's preferred by 51% of the population. Okay, but it's only 51% of the population, so somebody might easily say, a school system, right, might easily say, no, actually, we want to choose this other spelling, right, so that they could actually use this tool, change the spelling, and then their IT department could deploy it to lots of machines. So we made this tool not only so that individual users can use it, but also so that it can be shared. The solutions people create can be shared. So you can not only add new locales, you can also update existing locales if the data that's there, for whatever reason, they don't work for you. So yeah, that was a big design focus on it. So.
And one of the primary goals was really that combination. Actually, I think I mentioned it the first time. It's the getting out of the way. And yes, we do a lot of research and we make a lot of decisions about what we think is the best thing to ship for Microsoft, but it doesn't mean that people don't know better, certainly about their own languages. So the ability to override some of that is an important one. Because, it's not a matter of Microsoft knowing best or anything like that. I mean, we talk to experts, but everybody is their own expert when they're running the computer, and so giving people that ability is pretty important. Obviously, this is not the end. This is now there's a pattern. You see that there's tools out there, so people can probably guess what the future holds by saying, well, what else could be customized or what else needs to be customized. And a lot of those things are in the works, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to say any, but maybe if Kieran wanted to leak something, I would support her in that.
No, without leaking anything in particular, any area where we already provide support is something where we're thinking about how could we open it up if we get the customers requesting it. We're already thinking about the infrastructure pieces behind a lot of the work, so that because what we do in international is a big space. We provide a lot of support for lots of different aspects of the way people interact with software, and a lot of that is going to be really ideally tailored to the native language that people speak or the region that they live in. And so for that whole space, we're really taking an approach where we're trying to open things up as much as possible and think about what that would take for us from a requirements perspective, from a code perspective, think about how to change the way our infrastructure works to accommodate those requests when we get them in.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Is that a good non-specific answer?
Very good. And ideally not break any of the people who actually have been calling our existing functions.
Right.
And
Yep.
I mean, back-compat's always important, but it's especially important when people have been used to a closed set, and now it's a more open than they ever imagined set. We have to make sure that we're not doing things in such an ugly way that people would have problems just running Notepad and inserting a date format.
Yep.
In fact, Sean, with his Klingon locales, found many bugs in Office and other programs that are going to be fixed now, basically, because if you're not expecting a lot of variation, then having lots of variation is suddenly a problem.
Yeah.
So it's actually good that we're finding those bugs, and we definitely like all the support we're getting from the Klingon language community.
The Klingon language. Well, one of the cool things about the project, the way we're doing it, sort of an infrastructure piece on top of the project, is that we're thinking about ways to help customers who are using these tools share the solutions that they're creating in a way that doesn't mean that we have to license those solutions, right? Because that's an interesting challenge. If, again, 6,000 languages in the world, we just don't have the resources to go through and vet and say, yes, Microsoft is going to sign off on this. And so what we'd really like to do is create a space, in the ether somewhere, where people can actually say, look, I speak this language and I made this locale, and we want to trust our customers to say, okay, well, this person made this locale, looks like they're from this university, so I'm going to decide I trust that. Or looks like they're from this translation shop around the corner, not so sure. Like, we kind of want to deal with it like any third-party applications that people could choose to install on their machine and let people make the choices about what they're going to put there, right? And what we want to do is just kind of facilitate that sharing of our solutions, because it means people are using our tools and getting to use our platform that might not otherwise get to. And so, yeah, that's another big sort of, from the business strategic side of it, that's a huge piece of evangelizing the tools that we're creating. So
50 users here, 50 users there, it sooner or later adds up to
with Klingon it's
profitability
50.
for us, right?
Well,
and more users.
Although I was told, I think Sean told me that there are actually more people who speak Klingon than who speak Esperanto.
Well, that I believe. That I believe. But there's a lot of languages in the world that have millions of speakers that we still can't support, because we just, again, it's just a resource bar that we don't have the bodies to do it, and we don't. Another issue that you have a lot of times when you're trying to source data for some of these new locales is that when they're newer to technology, the region's newer to technology, we don't have the contacts in the region who can help us right now. It's really hard to find somebody who understands what we mean when we say, we need your calendar data so that we can make it work in our software infrastructure, right? Yeah. So if what we do is we put the tools out there, then people in the market can recognize those tools and start creating what's going to work in the market. So that's a lot of what's driving this.
Sounds like an interesting job.
Yeah.
Actually, beyond that, this process has upgraded from, it used to be we'd send them a template that was a text file in Notepad that they would insert their data, and that slowly over time grew into an Excel spreadsheet that they would then plug in the various things in an Excel spreadsheet. And now it is an application that we can have, even in cases where we are supporting a language, they can fill it in and do the work.
Yeah.
This also does a lot of the validation, which, even to this day, we occasionally find a bug from the Notepad days because of something that wasn't typed exactly right and nobody noticed. Friday had an extra D in it, or, anything like that.
One of the cool things is that these tools are actually going to help us with our internal work as well. So another PM on my team, who actually is the person who's really responsible for Locale Builder from a PM side, she's been driving it. she's putting together some best practices information for our subsidiary. So in the future, if there's a Microsoft-supported locale that has a problem, what we'd actually like them to do is use this tool to make the data change, give us the locale that we can then use to replace the data that we've already had. The same way right now we require keyboard submissions to come in using the keyboard tool. So this is going to actually help the work of Microsoft employees in the subsidiaries and the people here who triage those requests for changes.
Yeah.
So it should help customers out there, and it should help us here as well to do the job better. So,
Well, thanks.
sure.
Thanks for meeting with me and giving me a little tour.
Oh, definitely.
And thanks for doing this. It's really going to bring Windows into a whole bunch of new homes, hopefully. So.
Well, maybe we'll try this pattern that whenever you come back, we'll have something new to show
Excellent.
off.
That's the whole plan, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Keeps us working.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Sure.
Cool.